And it is a book about civil disobedience. And what he says is, we have got to take the regulatory state on. And what he suggests in his book is something he calls the Madison Fund. And he suggests that we get millionaires and billionaires to start donating and getting a fund of about $200 million. And then we make the government's life a living hell. He says what we do is defend people who are actually innocent of the regulatory charges against them. 2, defend people who are technically guilty of violating regulations, but those regulations shouldn't exist. And then generate as much publicity and as much pain on the government as possible. Can I tell you who had this idea? Very similar?
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead.
Martin Luther King.
Well, it was not only Martin Luther King. In another way, his idea is to overwhelm the state.
So you're talking about
Cloward and Piven. Just in a different way. This is to cause freedom. That's to cause a collapse. He's saying you can overwhelm the system with attorneys. And he said there's got to be big attorneys. And he said already he is getting calls from people who are big attorneys who are saying, I'll do that. I'll do that. I think we should talk to, I think we should talk to some of our friends, you know, like at Heritage or wherever, and see if they'll do this. Because if we can get people to do this, he suggested that if you're like, you know, part of the, you know, ADA, the, you know, American Dental Association, that they should do it as insurance. That if you're nailed by one of these regulations, we'll fight the battle. And everybody pays like $200-300 a month, or I mean a year, and you have a big fund for each specific, so broadcasters or bloggers. All of us get together and we do $200 a year, and that group fights stupid regulation.
I love that.
I do too. I think that works. He said, because right now what's happening is the regulators will come in and you'll just say, okay, whatever. Because you don't have a chance of winning.
Yeah.
And so there's no justice. Yeah, there's no justice. They'll beat you down. There's got to be a bigger dog in the fight that says, you know what, I'm going to call the Madison Fund right now. And for them to scare the devil out of Washington. Last night on television, the book is By the People. And the concept behind it is something he calls the Madison Fund, where the Madison Fund is a group of millionaires or billionaires or just regular citizens donating enough money to get up to about $200 million and then hiring attorneys to go after the EPA and OSHA and all these other administrative bureaucracies. So when you're nailed with something, if you're nailed by a bureaucrat with something that is just a stupid law, it pushes them back, and it causes a backlog and a short-circuiting of the system. As he said this, what he said, I said, well, that doesn't cause a reset. And then he said, no, it doesn't. It doesn't. He said, but it creates at least some justice, and it will at least hold them at bay. If you go after EPA or OSHA or anything like that, they will dig their heels in, and they will just keep standing there and standing there and standing there until finally the whole damn thing would collapse. I think this works. It is time for nonviolent civil disobedience. Nonviolence, noncompliance. It is time for that. But you have to do it in a strategic way. And I think this book called By the People by Charles Murray gives the outline. Now what we need are attorneys. We should call Seculo. What's the name of his organization? It's the Judicial Watch, right?
No, he's ACLJ, right?
ACLJ,
yeah.
Yes. We should call ACLJ and see if we could start having people put money into a fund, if they would staff that. Because isn't that kind of what ACLJ does in a way?
Yeah, I mean, they definitely do. I don't know if they handle the exact type of cases, but they're the ones that I always see, at least one of the big ones, standing up. There's certain organizations.
Rutherford does it as well?
Religious organizations.
The conservative answer to the ACLU.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's seeming like there is a group of organizations that do some of this, but it would be interesting to kind of see if you could coordinate those efforts.
We should try. Let's see if we can get one of them on or a couple of them on and see if let's send them this book or get them to read it and see if they have any interest in that, because that's something I could get behind.
Mm-hmm.